to the west.
Back to yes, country lads, thank you very much. The question, Minister, is in relation to the status of the 2019 local improvement scheme, and perhaps maybe you might make a statement on that, Minister, please. Thank you.
Minister Canney.
I'm going to take this to give Minister Ring a bit of time to draw his breath, if that's okay with the Deputy.
You're keeping it in the west.
We're keeping it in the west, exactly. And I also propose to take question number 66 and 102 together.
That's fine.
That's okay. The Local Improvement Scheme, or LIS, is the programme for improving works on small, private and non-public roads in rural areas. The scheme is funded by Minister Ring's department and is administered through the local authorities. And as the Deputy may be aware, there was no dedicated funding for this scheme for a number of years due to the constraints on the public expenditure. However, the Minister was very conscious of the underlying demand for the scheme in rural areas throughout the country. Minister Ring introduced the LIS scheme in September 2017 and allocated £17.5 million to local authorities for LIS roads in 2017. In 2018, he allocated over £20.8 million for LIS roads in 2 phases. And on February the 7th of this year, 2019, he announced a sum of £10 million for LIS 2019. Indicative allocations on a county-by-county basis can be found on the Department's website. It is a matter for the relevant local authority themselves to determine which roads they wish to prioritise from the funding allocated to them and to ensure that all roads meet with the scheme criteria. Local authorities were asked to submit the final list of roads they intend to complete under the 2019 scheme to the Department on or before the 1st of April, and Minister Ring's officials are currently examining these submissions to ensure that they meet the scheme criteria. The LIS has been a great success since the Minister introduced it in 2017, and it has supported improvement works on over 1,200 roads in the space of 18 months.
Thank you very much, Minister. Deputy McLoughlin.
Thank you very much indeed. Thanks very much, Mr Canney, and indeed Minister Ring as well. And first of all, I'd like to congratulate and thank both ministers. I had been lobbying Minister Ring, as other members have, in relation to the reintroduction of local improvement schemes in this country. It has benefited many families, many communities and indeed many local authorities throughout the length and breadth of this country. When we've seen the reintroduction of this in 2017 with an allocation of something in the region of 17.5 million. Also in 2018, 20.8 million. I think that the amount of work and the value that it has, that people have benefited as a result of it, and when you do the cost-benefit analysis within the local authorities and see what work has been done, and I know that in every area of this country that people have benefited as a result of the local improvement schemes. And I would ask, perhaps, Minister, that I know that the money that we get for local improvement schemes, we could never get enough, and I know that going round to meetings at the present time and speaking to local councillors and indeed different communities, that there is a need for perhaps maybe more money, and I wonder if there is any additional funding in any other department that you may have surplus to requirement, that you may consider additional funding being allocated to local improvement schemes. Because I personally think that the money that is spent there, and you have seen it yourself, I'm sure, Les, in your own constituency in Roscommon, the amount of value for money, and I think that people have benefited enormously as a result of it. So I just ask the Minister perhaps maybe to comment on that. Thank you.
Well, first of all, Deputy, everything you say, I concur with it as well. I'd say as all the deputies who are present today, because this is about a very effective way of creating the infrastructure in the rural areas, the most rural places, so that we can actually get around in our cars in a safe way and walk. Some of these roads become amenities and walking amenities as well. And I think the other big thing that the Minister did was he allowed the local authorities to claim up to 10% of the net cost of the project selected for administration, a reduction of 5%. So local authorities, by individual household as well, that the amount of money they have to put into it is capped at £1,200. So that actually is also a very good point to make, that if there's a big percentage or amount of money to be paid, and if there's a very few people there to do it, that it's capped at €1,200, which I think is a very, very important as well. I suppose you asked the question about the future, and having had discussions with Minister Ring. Minister Ring will be considering all of the budgets and reviewing it going on into the later on the year, and if there's any surplus money, I think that the LIA schemes is an exact place where this money can be spent quickly. And just to say finally, I suppose it is important to say that maybe you mentioned about other departments, but maybe other departments could actually come on board as well, and maybe if transport had a few pounds to spare, they could put it with this. It would actually greatly enhance the scheme going forward.
Final comment, Deputy?
Yeah, thanks very much indeed for your comments and your encouragement to, I suppose, the local authorities and indeed to every one of us as Oireachtas members, and in each one of our rural constituencies particularly, where we see the benefits of it. And I think that certainly going forward, that perhaps yourself and Minister Ring and Minister Canney and your own, you see it, that any money that is spent on the local improvement schemes is very worthwhile. And my concern would be that hopefully going forward that we would see additional funding. And you're right, Minister, if there were other fundings that could be made available through the Department of Transport in consultation with your own department to try and enhance local authorities to benefit these roads in all of our communities and all of our constituencies. Thank you very much indeed.
Final comment, Minister.
Finally, what we're talking about here is that I know myself, being in the local authority, when this scheme ceased in Galway back in 2008 or 2009, we were getting an allocation of nearly 1.5 million. Last year in Galway we got an allocation of 1.9 million, which is very important. So what I would say is that we're back up there. There are a lot of roads. There's a lot of roads in the queue to be done. And I think the local authorities are tackling them with vigour, and hopefully over the next number of years we will see where these roads will be taken out of the queue and done, and we will end up doing roads on demand, which would be very important as well, because when you put in an application now you might have to wait for maybe the next year's allocation. And I think it's important to say that this scheme, when it was first brought in, was a great scheme, and it's back in again, so we just need to support it and make sure that we protect it and enhance it and try and get more money for it from other departments as well.
Thank you very much, Minister.